자, 이번에는 디스커버리 2 한번 켜보자. 이거 전투 없이 그냥 이집트를 돌아다닐 수 있도록 해주는 뭐 그런 거라 그러던데, 직접 해본 적은 없는데 어떤 건지 한번 맛이라도 한번 보죠.
Welcome to Discovery Tour by Assassin's Creed, Ancient Egypt.
아예 안 오네. 투어 시작점.
Welcome to Alexandria. Planning. Alexander's plan to build his
별걸
great
다
city
만들어놨네. 별걸 다
began with a
만들어놨어.
verse from Homer's Odyssey. There is, in front of Egypt, in the sea with many swells, an island called Pharos.
이거 게임 말고 별도로 사실 수도 있어요.
Alexander the Great
따로
founded
팔더라고요
his
이거.
future city at the western end of the Nile Delta. Though Alexander considered this location ideal for his great city, it presented considerable challenges. Too difficult to access during storms, the surrounding swamps threatened disease, and the limestone soil prevented the growth of healthy crops. However, due to the influence of his mentor Aristotle, Alexander the Great recognized that the true value was its strategic emplacement. Alexander knew that in controlling Pelusium to the east, Memphis to the south, and his crowning glory Alexandria to the west, he would create a triangular stronghold, allowing him to control the entire delta while giving him access to the Mediterranean. The Great Walls of Alexandria had a humble beginning. Lacking chalk to outline the future city's foundations, architects were forced to use flour instead. Clouds of migrating birds swept down and ate the flour, erasing the plans. This prompted Alexander to seek guidance from the oracles, who reassured him that his future city was destined to feed a large population. Excavations led by Mahmud Bey al-Falaki in the 19th century revealed that the wall enclosure measured approximately 5.2 kilometers in length and 2.2 kilometers in width. It was roughly 9 meters in height.
높다. 10m짜리 정병이네.
These formidable ancient walls would resist a number of attacks, including fending off the king of Syria in 169 BCE.
시리아 왕이 누구죠?
It wasn't until
셀레우코스인가?
295 CE that they eventually fell to Roman Emperor Diocletian, and this only after 8 months of relentless assault.
디오클레티아누스면 사도 정치 때죠. 콘스탄티노폴리스 바로 콘스탄티누스 1세 바로 전이라고 생각하시면 됩니다.
Alexandria's principal architect, Dinocrates, chose a Hippodamian grid plan. The grid maximized functionality, with wide straight roads and canals running beneath them. Alexander recognized the military value of the city's design. The wide parallel streets gave him optimal surveillance of the city, while allowing the unobstructed flow of troops.
고대에도 아마 이렇게 철저한 계획 도시는 흔하지 않았겠죠. 대부분 아마 자연 발생한 도시였을 거고.
A central corridor ran from the Mediterranean's north port down to Lake Mareotis to the south. This thoroughfare acted as an unobstructed link for commercial trade and travel between the two ports. Many of the streets were bordered with grand buildings and parks, including Canopic Street, with its impressive gate bordering the eastern end.
Whoa.
Alexandria was most likely built upon an already existing Egyptian village. Upon its completion, the Egyptians reviled the city, refusing to call it by its founder's name. Instead, they called it Raked, the building, as a mark of disdain, which was later Hellenized into Rakotis. Despite this, the name Alexandria would remain.
토착민들은 싫어했군요. 새로운 투어를 선택할 수도 있고. 와, 얘들은 도대체 뭘 만든 걸까? 얘들은 게임을 만든 걸까? 아니면 멀묘프로 만들어 놓은 걸까 이게? 자, 소개함 요거 한번 들어보죠. 지점 저 이거 따라와 볼게요.
Welcome to Introduction to Alexandria. After conquering Egypt in 331 BCE, Alexander the Great decided to build a new city, which, as per his habit, he named after himself. After his death, Alexandria quickly became the capital city of the Ptolemaic kingdom and the most important city of the Greek world.
사실 여기 나오는 이수스 전투하고는 별 상관없습니다. 이집트하고는. 그러니까 지리적으로 말이지.
The city was built between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Mareotis, which resulted in Alexandria becoming a crucial cultural hub and trading center. Sumptuous buildings could be seen wherever one turned their gaze. The royal palaces, the many temples, the gymnasium, lush public gardens, and large avenues. With its incomparable beauty and advantageous geographic location, Alexandria attracted foreigners, intellectuals, and traders. One of the most cosmopolitan cities of the ancient world, Alexandria supplanted even Athens as the most important Greek city in history. Egyptian obelisks were highly prized by Roman architects. While Roman design previously favored the use of a single monument, Egyptian obelisks tended to come in pairs and were generally located at the entrance of temples. Several ancient Egyptian obelisks are still in existence today, though many are spread out across the world in locations such as Paris, Rome, New York, and London. All of this shows that Alexandria was significantly influenced by the rich past of Egypt.
요거는 디스커버리 투어라는 거예요.
Alexandria had several main streets.
얘들 이걸 가지고
Its most
게임만
famous
만들기 아까웠는지
artery was the Canopic Way.
역사를
It was lined
설명해주는
with sumptuous
일종의
buildings,
투어도
houses,
만들어놨어요.
and temples, and was roughly 8 kilometers in length. This street was one of the most important shipping entrances to Alexandria, and often hosted processions and festivals.
대단한 놈들이요, 대단한 놈들.
The width of the street, 30 meters, was abnormally large even by Greek standards. This is likely because the Canopic Way was made in a short span of time and based on an urban plan, as opposed to being slowly built over time, as was usual for the era. The Canopic Way originated in the western cemeteries, skirted the gymnasium, and then exited the city to head east through massive doorways towards Canopus. This structure was known as the Canopic Door.
이건 따로 그림이 없네. 이건 이따 안 보고. 예, 뭐 그런 셈입니다. 근데 알렉산드리아뿐만 아니라 다른 데도 있어요. 멤피스나 이런 데도 있겠죠 아마. 되게 게임을 잘 만든 것 같아. 옛날에 게임이 막 생기면서 교육용 게임이란 것도 막 나왔었었는데 그런 거에 완성된 형태가 이런 게 아닌가 싶어요.
The ports of Alexandria were a major commercial hub, effectively connecting Egypt with the Mediterranean regions and beyond. A tremendous amount of materials and goods flowed through the city on a daily basis.
신디케이트까지는 의미 없는 수집 노가다로 그걸 채웠는데
It was there that merchandise was
오리진은
traded by
확실하게
the
제대로
shipowners,
만들었네요.
called nakliros.
진짜로 도움되는 방향으로 만들었네.
Food and other artisan work streamed out of Egypt. Ceramics, glass, golden rings, and minted coinage. The local potters, using traditional Egyptian techniques, competed with those from abroad, and the textile industry flourished. What Egypt did not produce itself was acquired through trade, using local resources such as wheat and papyrus. Most sought after was pine wood from Syria, iron and marble from the Greek islands, gold from Spain, and exotic fruits from Europe. All this commercial activity contributed to the already decadent wealth of the city.
퇴폐적으로 변해버린 부. 정희씨 안녕하세요.
The wood imported to Port Mareotis through Alexandria's seaward ports was
야, 꽤
used in
크다.
the nearby shipyards, where most of Egypt's ships were built. Employing tens of thousands of
안녕하세요.
shipbuilders, the shipyards contributed to establishing the Egyptian fleet as one of the mightiest of the era. Any wood not used in shipbuilding was further disseminated through Egypt for various purposes.
봄씨 안녕.
The southern port of Lake Mareotis was the biggest in Alexandria. Save for a branch angling westward, the lake's size in the Ptolemaic era was roughly 40 to 50 kilometers
저
from north to
오른쪽이
south.
바다 쪽이고 아마
Its waters were
남쪽이
maintained by a steady
왼쪽 부분이
runoff
호수
from the
같은데
Nile.
이 그림에서.
In addition to the lake, a man-made canal was created to assist in the transfer of goods from the city to the port using barges, though it is not represented in the game due to its size.
게임에서는 구현하지 않았습니다.
Banking was one of the most distinctive innovations brought by the Greeks to Egypt. The centerpiece of Alexandria's wealth was the royal systematization of taxes
프톨레마이우스
on almost
4세
everything.
필로파토스랍니다.
Basic items such as salt, oil, beer, wheat, and linen were heavily taxed. As a result, the royal treasury of Alexandria was able to ensure the economic stability of most of the administrative areas of Egypt. By the late 12th century, the channel feeding the lake from the Nile silted up. Lake Mareotis lost its connection to the Mediterranean, as well as most of its water, as the lake slowly evaporated to a fraction of its former size. In modern times, Lake Mareotis is being kept alive through irrigation. However, only about 17% of its original size remains.
저기 지금 중간에 보이는 게 그 호수인가 보죠? 대단한 새끼들. 게임으로 이런 걸 만들 생각하다니. 알렉산드리아 포위전 한번 보죠. 율리우스 카이사르의 관점에서 본 알렉산드리아 포위전에 대해 알아보십시오.
Welcome to the Siege of Alexandria. Among the collection of writings attributed to Julius Caesar are his descriptions of the Siege of Alexandria, the Gallic Wars, and the commentaries on the Civil War.
내란기.
These archives contain information on different campaigns, the wars of Alexandria, Africa, and Spain. Each of them recounts Caesar's military activity from 58 BCE to 45 BCE. Though Caesar's documents remain a main source of information, it's important to note that the perspective is limited. It is necessary for other historical documents to be taken into consideration to provide a better understanding of events. The Siege of Alexandria closely relays the events of the civil war that led up to the event and describes how Caesar was besieged in the palace of the Ptolemies. Other ancient authors have left equally valuable
나오겠죠.
and sometimes contradictory information.
카이사르 기록하고 별개 그러니까 배치되는 기록들도 좀 있는 모양이네요. 뭐 자기 책이니까 자기 짱짱짱 그렇게 적어놨겠죠.
In the events leading up to the Siege of Alexandria, Cleopatra VII and her brother were fighting over control of Egypt. Young King Ptolemy XIII's regent, Pothinus, had firm control over the young pharaoh, and an outmaneuvered Cleopatra soon went into hiding. This set the stage for Pompey's arrival in Alexandria. Having lost his battle against Caesar in 48 BCE, the Roman general turned to his allies, the Egyptians, for safe harbor. But on the advice of Pothinus, Ptolemy XIII had Pompey assassinated in the hopes of earning Caesar's favor. This would turn out to be a most unfortunate decision.
폼페우스의 죽음.
Upon his arrival in Alexandria, Caesar was presented with Pompey's head. The sight of a Roman murdered by Egyptians did not sit well with him. Caesar made his displeasure clear, ordering the return of Cleopatra, and for the siblings to resolve their differences and resume their co-rule of Egypt, as per the will of their father. Neither Pothinus nor Ptolemy XIII wished to accede to this demand. While doing his best to aggravate Caesar, Pothinus secretly plotted against the Roman ruler, and sent word for Egyptian general Achilles to bring his 20,000 men to fight on his behalf. While Pothinus plotted against Caesar, Cleopatra made a bold move.
여기로 가야 되나 보다. 여기가 왕궁이죠. 네.
There are various descriptions of the encounter between Caesar and Cleopatra. One report states that she snuck into the palace alone at night. Another account claims she was accompanied by an ally and was brought inside the palace wrapped in a carpet bag. Though exactly what happened at this fateful meeting is up for debate, what is known is that Cleopatra met with Caesar and earned his approval. Pothinus and Ptolemy XIII were most vexed with this turn of events.
아, 저기 있네. 가짜 카이사르 놈. 먹고 살아야죠. 관광객을 때리면 안 되지. 얘는 중국인도 아니잖아요.
With Cleopatra finally present, Caesar chose to act as mediator between the siblings in the hopes of a peaceful resolution. It did not take long for things to sour. During a banquet given to celebrate the reconciliation, there was an assassination attempt on Caesar. It was the Roman leader's own barber who thwarted the attack. Once it was revealed that the king's regent, Pothinus, had ordered the attack, Caesar had him executed. He then placed the young king under guard.
Whoa. Oh. Whoa.
Caught within the palace with roughly 4,000 troops, and with the knowledge that the arrival of enemy forces was imminent, Caesar sent for help from Syria, Rhodes, and Cilicia. He ordered his men to
실리시아라는군요.
dig a ditch
킬리키아를
around the
의미하는데
palace and build a wall leading to the
지금의
harbor.
아나톨리아 서남부를
This
의미합니다.
would
서남부.
ensure Caesar's access to the sea.
남부인가?
When
남부를
Egyptian
봐야
General
되나? 아무튼
Achilles
그쯤이다.
arrived in the city with 20,000 men,
남부겠구나.
the battle for Alexandria began.
머리카락이 중요하죠. 여자 꼬시려고 그러면 머리카락이 있어야지. 없으면 대머리잖아요.
With so few men at his disposal, Caesar could not risk a battle just yet. He sent ambassadors to Achilles in the name of Ptolemy to propose a truce. Knowing that the orders did not come from the young king, and angered by the pharaoh's imprisonment, Achilles had the messengers assassinated. With Caesar confined within the palace, Achilles positioned his troops around the city. Skirmishes broke out throughout the streets of Alexandria and went on for several days and nights. Though they were outnumbered, Caesar's men were able to hold the enemy back. This prompted Achilles' next move: capture the Roman fleet stationed in the harbor.
갑자기 전투 중이네요.
Idioti! And love minuti gnostis.
Although the palace offered protection, losing the port meant the end of help and supplies. Caesar knew he had to protect the fleet. While he and his troops succeeded in regaining control of the port, he knew it would be impossible to sustain. Caesar ordered the burning of the ships. With passage back to the palace closed off, he headed for the Lighthouse of Alexandria.
Whoa.
Fighting their way through the Egyptian troops, Caesar and his men eventually reached Pharis Island. There, they took refuge within the lighthouse.
저렇게 생겼군요.
With easy access to the open sea, Caesar was able to send messages to his allies requesting reinforcements and more supplies. The island fort also allowed him to control access to the harbor by relying on the chains used by the Egyptians to control ship traffic to and from Alexandria's docks. The exact chronology of events during the war in Alexandria remain imprecise. Conflicting accounts raise questions as to when, and even if, the Great Library of Alexandria was burned down at all. One account states that during the fighting, docks and warehouses were burned, and this was the fire that spread to the library. In another account, when Achilles cut off the harbor, Caesar had to leave the safety of the palace to defend his ships. As the enemies battled across the port, their arsenals set ships ablaze, and this destruction spread to the library.
도서관은 항구 근처에 짓지 말자 뭐 그런 교훈이라고 생각하시면 되겠습니다.
In either case, the Great Library was not completely destroyed. Experts point out that its location was too far from the harbor, and much later texts refer to the Great Library as being intact. Warehouses near the harbor contained manuscript copies awaiting export, and it is more likely that these documents were destroyed than the Great Library itself.
Whoa!
The destruction of the Great Library may have been due to a number of fires over the ages. Its end was probably closer to the 4th century CE, when the Christian Emperor Theodosius I ordered the closure of all pagan temples. While some documents survived after being moved away, it remains
아트라토타로의
unclear
시작
just what
지점 바로
knowledge
직전
may have
황제라고
been
생각하시면
lost.
되겠습니다. 호노리우스하고 그 다음에 그 새끼 누구야? 아무튼 그 새끼들이 아빠다 라고 생각하시면 되겠어요.
Where
아르카디우스네.
there are accounts
맞아.
of Achilles being in control of the battle against Caesar, it appears that instead Cleopatra's sister, siding with her brother, had him killed and put her ally Ganymedes in his place. Ganymedes proved a valuable tactician for the Egyptian side. It was his idea to cut Caesar's access to the harbor, thus trapping Caesar at the palace.
Whoa!
During the time of Ptolemy I, canals had been dug throughout Alexandria to provide fresh water. Ganymedes had his men take control of these canals. After isolating their own water supply, he had his men pour salt water into the canals and cisterns that led to Caesar's camp.
잠시만요.
Whoa!
Panic erupted in Caesar's men. They wouldn't last long without fresh water. Recognizing that the porous limestone could help them, Caesar and his men dug wells to restore their water supply. Days later, the 37th Legion, comprised of Pompey's soldiers, arrived by ship. Unable to come ashore due to the winds, Caesar risked going out to meet them on the peninsula, Cape Chersonese. When the enemy learned Caesar's location, they rushed to intercept. Despite an obvious advantage for the Alexandrians, Caesar, with a Rhodian ship full of skillful sailors, emerged victorious.
전화 좀 받았습니다.
Whoa!
With help from the Allied ships, Caesar's victory enabled him to push the Egyptians back and secure the lighthouse. Gaining control of Pharis Island sent the Alexandrians into the sea and swimming back to the city. However, Caesar's fortification of the island didn't last long. The enemy regrouped and were set to storm the island. Panic-stricken, in spite of Caesar's encouragement, many of his men then fled their posts, either by ship or jumping into the sea.
역시 갈리아 야만인들 상대하는 것보다는 문명인들 상대하는 게 힘들었나 보다.
Whoa!
Caesar attempted to retreat, but Port Eunostos' harbor was overrun with enemy ships, preventing escape. Reportedly, Caesar gathered his papers and leapt overboard in an attempt to swim to an Allied ship farther out. Historian Cassius Dio claimed that Caesar would have drowned if he hadn't been able to remove his purple garment. Still, he managed to swim the distance and survive. The Alexandrians recovered the cloak and used it as a trophy to commemorate the Roman debacle.
Whoa.
Unhappy with Ganymedes and wanting their king restored, the Alexandrians approached Caesar with a compromise. Caesar agreed to release Ptolemy XIII after entreating him to spare the kingdom and remain loyal to Rome. Once freed, however, the king defied the agreement and continued the war.
Whoa.
By this time, a faithful ally of Caesar's, Mithridates, arrived in Egypt, clashing with Ptolemy's troops at Pelusium. Outnumbering the enemy, Mithridates secured the region between Pelusium and
여기서
Alexandria.
미트리다테스는 누구죠?
Ptolemy, warned of Caesar's ally marching on Alexandria, sent his troops to prevent passage over the river.
Whoa.
그냥 로마 장군인가?
Mithridates warned Caesar in time, and the two groups confronted the armies of Ptolemy in the Delta. In the Battle of the Nile, the Romans gained the upper hand, sending the Egyptians fleeing. In the tumult and panic, King Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile.
Whoa.
After the siege ended, Cleopatra VII married her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, enabling her to reign over Egypt until 30 BCE. Under her rule, Alexandria settled into its position within the Roman Empire, and eventually surpassed Athens as one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire. Julius Caesar remained in Egypt for a short time. He and Cleopatra would later have a son named Caesarion.
Whoa.
알렉산드리아 포위전의 결론은 카이사르하고 클레오파트라 사이의 파워 섹스에서 이제 카이사리온이란 아이가 태어났다는 거네. 심오하군요.
Welcome to Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt.
Whoa.
Cleopatra VII Theophilopator ascended the throne in 51 BCE
예쁘게
at the
생겼네요.
age of 18. Though her early attempts to maintain power were often challenged, she eventually prevailed and became the sole ruler of Egypt. According to Plutarch, she was the only Ptolemaic pharaoh to speak the Egyptian language. Her intelligence, coupled with a good education and a great political mind, allowed her to make the alliances necessary to maintain the independence of Egypt while Rome was becoming a Mediterranean empire.
Whoa.
It is important to understand that Cleopatra's knowledge of Egyptian
미트리다테스가
language
누구더라?
and keen understanding of the culture
저때
allowed her to make
그게-
powerful ideological reference that resonated with ancient Egyptians. By associating herself with
어디
the
왕일
goddess
거예요.
Isis,
어디
the
왕인데
divine mother,
카이사르가
great of
도와달라
magic,
그래서 아마
and
원군을 보냈던
repository
사람일
of
거예요.
divine
근데
essence,
누군지 기억이 안 나네.
Cleopatra firmly established herself as the protector of the two lands and legitimized her place on the throne.
Whoa.
이 투어는 가급적이면 내려서 가는 게 낫겠다. 시점이 자꾸 어긋나는 것 같아.
Upon his death in 51 BCE, Ptolemy XII Aulus bequeathed his kingdom to his daughter and eldest son, Cleopatra VII and Ptolemy XIII. As was custom, the siblings were married. The new pharaoh was 10 years old, his sister wife 17. The early years of their reign were not easy. Between 50 and 48 BCE, droughts and floods aggravated Egypt's problems. General Achilles and the royal advisor Pothinos kept intervening in the young ruler's political decisions, and eventually colluded to turn Ptolemy XIII against Cleopatra. By 48 BCE, Cleopatra was in exile. During Cleopatra's exile, the Roman Empire was not without its own internal conflict. Caesar and Pompey were at war with one another, and after his defeat in 48 BCE, Pompey fled to Alexandria in the hope of finding refuge. This turned out to be an unwise decision. Listening to his advisors, Ptolemy XIII elected to have Pompey assassinated, his head kept as a gift, in the hopes of acquiring Caesar's favor. This gambit backfired. Instead of earning approval, the murder of a Roman greatly angered Caesar.
진짜 폼페이우스. 대머리들이 그렇죠 뭐.
Cleopatra, aware of Caesar's anger against Ptolemy for the murder of Pompey, decided to take advantage of the situation. She returned to Egypt in
오른쪽
secret,
여자 표정 좀
hoping
봐요.
to establish an alliance with one of the most powerful men of the time. Outside of the legend, where she had herself smuggled into his quarters in a carpet, what exactly happened during that fateful meeting remains a mystery. However, Caesar seemed to see a better ruler for Egypt in Cleopatra than in her young and too easily influenced brother. Invoking Ptolemy XII's will, Caesar attempted to mediate peace between the siblings.
몰라요. 몰라. 그냥
Ptolemy
포인트로
XIII
넣었나
was
보죠.
enraged by the turn of events, and his advisors were none too happy to see Cleopatra return. Urged on by General Achilles and Pothinos, the young pharaoh plotted against Caesar and Cleopatra, resulting in the Siege of Alexandria in 47 BCE. It was in March 47 BCE that Caesar defeated Ptolemy XIII's forces. The young pharaoh drowned in the Nile after having fled the battlefield. With her opponents dead or powerless, Cleopatra married her other much younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, and finally claimed the throne of Egypt for good. The end of the Alexandrian War also cemented the romantic and political alliance between Cleopatra and Caesar. In June of 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, whom she called Caesarion. Caesar did not accept the boy as his heir, choosing instead his nephew Octavian. Nonetheless, on his return to Rome, Caesar invited the queen and her brother husband to stay in the city. Her presence still drew much disapproval from the Senate. Always a strategist, Caesar left 4 legions in Egypt, and a man he trusted to direct Egyptian affairs, giving him control of the wheat supplies essential to Rome. Cleopatra and her entourage remained in Rome until March 44 BCE, when Caesar was murdered.
뭐 진짜 아들이면 어떻고 진짜 아들이 아니면 어때요? 어쨌건 둘이 파워 섹스 했다는데. 그게 중요한 거죠.
Caesar's most faithful ally, Mark Antony, often visited the Queen of Egypt during his stay in Rome. Unlike most, He recognized the legitimacy of Caesarion, the natural son of Caesar. Antony knew he would need the riches of Egypt in order to fight Octavian and claim the Roman Empire. Cleopatra, in return, saw a powerful ally. In the winter of 41 BCE, she arranged a sumptuous tour of Egypt by boat to show Antony the wealth of her country and the power she held as its ruler. A romantic and political relationship followed. The Roman Senate was once again most displeased. To calm spirits in Rome, Antony married Octavia, sister of Octavian. Despite his marriage to Octavia, Antony remained Cleopatra's lover, and she gave birth to their children. Cleopatra increased her kingdom's territory and started a political propaganda alongside her lover in Egypt and beyond. She hoped to create a Ptolemaic federal empire with Alexandria at its center. Antony eventually repudiated his Roman wife for the Egyptian queen, much to the dismay of the Roman elite. However, while Mark Antony focused on Egypt, Octavian carefully gained military and political ascendancy over him in Rome.
나라도 여왕 선택하겠다. 여왕님인데.
Octavian managed his own propaganda campaign and succeeded. The Roman people hated Mark Antony and Cleopatra. To avoid the censure still inherent in attacking a fellow Roman, Octavian simply declared war against Egypt. Rome's power still reigned supreme. The powerful Egyptian fleet, led by Cleopatra as well as Mark Antony's forces, were defeated in 31 BCE in Actium. Octavian arrived in Egypt in 30 BCE to formalize his victory. The following events remain difficult to confirm due to the many versions and legends around them. It is believed that after hearing a rumor about Cleopatra's suicide, Mark Antony committed suicide himself. He was brought to the queen as he slowly passed away. Knowing that Octavian would have her chained and paraded through Rome in defeat, Cleopatra planned her own suicide. She most likely killed herself with arsenic, though admittedly, the version where she uses an asp to deliver a fatal bite may be considered more dramatic. What happened to the body of Cleopatra is still a mystery.
클레오파트라. 이거 생각보다 되게 많구나. 고대에는 남편이나 아내 누구든 먼저 이혼을 요구할 수 있었습니다. 이유는 필요 없었죠. 아, 방금 그림이 여자 가슴 나왔었어요. 19세기 그림이었는데, 근데 저걸 보고 성욕을 느끼는 병신 새끼는 없겠죠 아마. 아무 이유 없는 이혼.
Welcome to the Greek Pharaohs.
여긴 알렉산드로스의 무덤이네요.
Pharaohs were considered divine incarnations of the gods. As an avatar of the gods living on Earth, the pharaoh's role was to
아니요,
preserve
19까지는 아니고 그냥 여자
fundamental values
가슴이었는데
and universal harmony by removing chaos,
19세기 유화에 나온
defect,
그림이라서
and
아마 별
ensure
상관
that
없을 거예요.
justice might prevailed. The pharaoh, by divine ancestry and through multiple offerings,
왜 그
was the
프랑스
bond that
혁명 얘기할
unites the
때
world
자유의
of
여신에
men
나오는
to
그런
the world
가슴처럼
of the
그런
gods,
거였어.
and allows the maintenance of the cosmic order.
그 물론 여성부 7급 공무원 여러분들의 생각은 다를 수 있기 때문에 제가 존중해 드립니다. 변태 새끼들아.
The Ptolemaic Dynasty reigned over Egypt from 305 BCE to 30 BCE. The dynasty was called the Ptolemies of the Lagids, in recognition of the founder of the dynasty, Ptolemy Lagos, a Greek general and close friend of Alexander the Great. While Macedonian, Ptolemy Lagos understood that to be accepted by the Egyptian people, he would have to adopt their traditions. Upon assuming the title of pharaoh, he changed his name to Ptolemy I Soter, meaning savior.
프톨레마이오스 1세 소테르.
Born in 356 BCE, Alexander the Great went through a hasty education in the affairs of the kingdom before integrating into the Macedonian army, where he quickly rose through the ranks. After his father's assassination in 336 BCE, which some believed was orchestrated by Alexander himself, he became king of Macedonia. Ruler of a unified kingdom and leader of a large army, Alexander set his sights on conquest. Eager to reclaim the Greek cities of Asia Minor, he took on the Persian forces, earning victory after victory.
다시 말하지만 이 수수 전투는 이집트하고 별 관련이 없어요.
Ever victorious, Alexander the Great marched on, laying siege to city after city until he reached Egypt, where the Persians were defeated yet again. Viewed as a liberator by the Egyptian people, Alexander decided to become pharaoh in due form. He traveled to Thebes to make a sacrifice to Apis, then went to the oasis of Siwa, where he was proclaimed son of Amun. Officially pharaoh of Egypt, Alexander spent much of the winter there and founded the city of Alexandria. Perhaps not coincidentally, being pharaoh allowed Alexander to spread propaganda to prepare further conquests. He resumed his military campaigns in 331 BCE. On his deathbed in 323 BCE, Alexander the Great gifted the satrapy of Egypt to Ptolemy Lagos.
준 거 아닙니다.
Perfectly aware of the value of Egypt, Ptolemy ensured not only the stability of the country's borders, but also its economic and military development.
저기도 지금 희미하게 여자 가슴이
At the
보이는
same
같은데
time, he
저걸
worked with the
보고
Egyptian elite to maintain the internal order
아
of the
모르겠다
country.
씨발 병신들은 많으니까.
By 305 BCE, Ptolemy, well respected both in Egypt and in the Mediterranean, was at the head of the largest fleet of the Hellenistic world. Ptolemy officially took the title of Pharaoh of Egypt in January 304 BCE, on the anniversary of Alexander the Great's death. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BCE. His remains were placed first in a solid gold sarcophagus, and then within another. The casket was carried in an ornate custom wagon, gilded and set with precious stones, and pulled by 64 mules crowned with gold. The funeral procession was diverted to a grandiose temple in Alexandria, built in the conqueror's honor under the orders of Ptolemy I. Julius Caesar visited Alexander's tomb at the capture of Alexandria, and the Roman Emperor Augustus
가짜
reportedly
카이사르네요.
placed
가짜
flowers there.
카이사르.
However, though many powerful leaders claim to have visited it, the tomb's location has gone missing from history. Some accounts do state that the golden coffin was replaced by a glass sarcophagus, probably by Ptolemy X. It is also implied that Cleopatra may have plundered the tomb in a time of financial crisis.
자 그리스계 파라오. 이거 그냥 제 번외편으로 떼우려고 생각했었었는데 생각보다 되게 양이 많네요. 이것도 그냥 영상으로 올려야겠다. 보고 있어 재밌네요. 저도.
Welcome to Alexandria, city of celebration. Like most Greek cities, Alexandria offered multiple forms of entertainment. Most were related to cults, religious practices, and the festivities surrounding those practices. Among those festivities, the most important ones were the dynastic celebrations, instituted in honor of the deified Ptolemaic kings and queens. These celebrations could go on for many days and included sacrifices, offerings, processions, and public banquets.
Light-bringing Phoebus, I am but your lyre. Hear my oath, give me
Games and competitions were organized whenever
이걸
possible
보고도
in
성욕을
locations
느끼는
such as the
병신들이 있을
stadium,
테니까
the
아마
hippodrome, and the
그것도 존중해 줘야
gymnasium.
될까 내가.
The residents of Alexandria favored such events, where athletes, poets,
화난다,
and
생각하니까.
musicians from Egypt and other cities of the Greek world competed. Like all good Greek cities, Alexandria had a theater. The architecture of this structure is Roman in style. This is because the team duplicated a theater from Cyrene. Roman theaters were usually semicircular and built from scratch on a flat area with structures designed to
안녕하세요.
enhance oration. Greek theaters were more oblong in shape, similar to a horseshoe, and favored the slopes of natural hills to support their acoustics. At the theater, one could witness the plays of contemporary comic and tragic authors. The play you are witnessing below is Menander's Dyskolos, more commonly known as The Grouch, a late and popular entry in the Greek comedies.
축제 도시 알렉산드리아. 알렉산드리아 아이들은 어떤 교육을 받았을까요? 미적분에 배웠겠죠. 미적분과 산술과 기하학을 배웠겠지.
Welcome to Education in Alexandria. The education of young Alexandrians did not differ from the one generally dispensed elsewhere in ancient Greece. At the age of 7, the child was taken in charge by a tutor, who then became responsible for instilling an elementary education as well as good moral principles.
요즘은 저런 거 안 가르치잖아. 요즘은 도덕적 책임 그런 거 안 가르치잖아요. 인간으로서의 가치 그런 거 안 가르치잖아.
Teaching was generally done outside, in the open air. In the gymnasium, students were taught not only sports, but also topics such as rhetoric, philosophy, music, and poetry. All things deemed essential to one's education at the time. Here, both girls and boys are shown attending a class given by one of the rhetoricians of the era. The team made the choice to show both genders attending class within the context of the game world. Even though it is historically inaccurate, the team felt it was not necessary to prioritize historical sexism over inclusive gameplay.
저 때는 그 여자들은 제대로 사람 취급을 못 받았어요. 전 제작진도 자기 문제가 뭔지는 알고 있는 것 같습니다. 자, 알렉산드리아의 대도서관. 안녕하세요.
Welcome to the Great Library. Near the district of royal palaces and within the Mouseion was the most famous library of all antiquity. The Library of Alexandria was built to house all of human knowledge. At its pinnacle, the library was believed to contain over 700,000 parchments. Throughout the centuries, fires and wars between Christianity and paganism destroyed the library,
그게 일반적인
leaving
여자는
nothing
아니잖아.
behind. The loss of the building, and more importantly, its vast collection, is immeasurable. As no descriptions are available, the team's rendition of the Library of Alexandria was inspired by the
이거는
visuals of the
지금
Library of Chalcis at
튀르크
Ephesus.
서해안이겠네. 아나톨리아 서해안 지역이겠죠. 헬라계 유적일 겁니다. 여기도 대학원생들이 씨발
While
고생하는
much
거
of
봐라
the
이거.
collection was purchased at the government's expense, the library also obtained books through other means. Any books owned by travelers coming through the city were seized to be copied for the library. The copy would then be returned to the owner, and the original entered into the library's collection.
쓰레기들 아님 이거. 원본 책을 빼앗고 필사본을 만들어서 사본을 만들어서 사본은 원래 주인한테 주고 원본은 지가 가져갔다는 거잖아.
Alexandria offered unrivaled intellectual and cultural attractions. Eminent scholars from Athens, Rhodes, and other Greek centers traveled to the city to learn and engage with other free thinkers. Both the Mouseion and the library were at the center of groundbreaking ideas and creative expression.
저기 앉아 있는 5명은 지금 대학원생 같은데.
The great minds of antiquity were usually well versed in many disciplines, which were often associated to specific schools of thought. The Peripatetics, the Stoics, and the Cynics were among the most well-known schools of the time. It is clear that Alexandria lived up to its fundamental role as a city for intellectuals, nurturing many great minds whose impact reverberates through our modern world. Hypatia of Alexandria was a Greek mathematician, philosopher, astronomer, and inventor. Though born in Greece, she eventually migrated to Alexandria, like many great minds of the time. It is there that she became the head of the Neoplatonist school of Alexandria. From most accounts, she was highly respected by her fellow Alexandrians, both as a teacher and a philosopher. With her death, the age of great ancient scientific discoveries came to an end. Telemachus was born in Cyrene and educated in Athens. After his studies, he moved to Alexandria to work in the Great Library. A poet and a critic, he strongly rejected the epic format of Homeric poems, and instead fervently supported a shorter, more judiciously formulated style of poetry. His epigrams and elegiac poems were emulated by later poets. His work was extremely popular, second only to Homer's own works.
유비가 유비다 보니까 아무래도 여자에 대한 언급은 확실하네요.
It was in Alexandria that
유비가 좀
mathematician
꿀패
Euclid,
미끼가 있죠.
the father of geometry, wrote the Elements, laying out the foundational work
이
of what would
아저씨는
become
보통
modern
우리가
algebra and
유클리드라고
number
알고
theory.
있는데
Euclidean geometry would
영어로
become
이제
one of the most
유클리드라고 했고요.
influential systems in the
사실
evolution of
헬라어로는
mathematics.
에우클레이데스라고 했습니다. 에우클레이데스. 그래서 원어를 살려서 읽으면은 에우클레이데스 기하학이라고 읽는 게 맞습니다. 근데 아무도 그렇게 안
How do
읽죠.
you
씨발.
calculate the circumference of the Earth? With a camel, 2 sticks, and shadows cast by the sun. This is what Eratosthenes of Cyrene described in his principal work, Geography, while he was director of the Great Library of Alexandria. He is credited for the invention of the armillary spear around 250 BCE. The earliest known and most complete armillary sphere of antiquity was the Meteoroscopion of Alexandria, with an imposing 9 rings compared to the 3 or 4 of most other
혼천이라는 거는
astrolabes.
지구
Known as the
주변의
zodiac krakatoi amongst the
천문학적인
Greeks, the meteoroscopion
것들의
was
위치를
used to
표현해 놓은
determine the
기계를
location of
통틀어서 혼천이라
celestial
그러는
bodies
거예요.
around the Earth. Every
한자
self-respecting
표현이죠.
astronomer of antiquity would have sought to use this tool to better understand the celestial movements. Pythagoras of Samos was a well-known and respected philosopher and
이거는 풍이
mathematician.
중세다.
He is best known for the Pythagorean Theorem. However, there
사람들
is
얼굴이
proof
튀어
that the
있다.
theorem existed in Babylonia and India long before Pythagoras was born, casting some doubts as to who exactly originated the
뭐
theorem.
경도 위도 그런 거 볼 수 있겠죠. 아 이거요? 그러네. 그냥 설명이네요. 설명. 자, 알렉산드리아 대도서관이었습니다. 무세이오는 뭐지? 나 뭐 돌려서 그 자이로스코프처럼 뭐 나오는 줄 알았는데 그건 아닌 것 같습니다. 박물관이야? 어이씨, 깜짝이야.
Welcome to the Mouseion of Alexandria. The Mouseion was a sector of the city commissioned by Ptolemy I to rival Athens' Academy as an
저 위에.
institute of intellectual pursuit.
남자 가슴.
Dedicated to the 9 inspiring muses, the Mouseion became a great center for philosophical and scientific enlightenment. It welcomed scholars from many kingdoms, inviting them to share knowledge in literature, science, and geography.
그렇게 놀라시면 어떡해요. 제우스의 9딸들이 뮤즈 여신들이구나.
The Mouseion was designed so that its buildings and grounds would accommodate free thinking, debate, and presentation.
지금 대학원보다 낫네.
Meeting spaces and theaters surrounded a main courtyard. Expansive gardens were filled with exotic plants that aided in the study and supply of herbs and medicines. A zoo offered the study of animal behavior and physiology. Also among the Mouseion's many star attractions was its astronomical observatory.
옛날엔 천문학과가 인기 학과였는데 지금은
Herophilus was a physician who lived most of his life in Alexandria. He was able to perform the dissection of human cadavers on a large scale due to the permissiveness of the city in such matters. Among many other discoveries, he learned that the brain was central to the human nervous system.
그래서 머리를 자르면
He
죽는
also
거죠.
extensively mapped the blood system and measured the pulse with the aid of a water clock. It is reported that in his thirst to understand human anatomy, he performed 600 vivisections on live prisoners.
그냥 인간 도살자잖아. 그러면 산채를 해보였다잖아요. 지금 600명을.
In order to be free to pursue their research, scholars were fed and housed at the Mouseion at the government's expense.
지금 대학원보다 낫네요.
This freedom provided Alexandria's scholars a meeting space for intellectual pursuits and a haven for spiritual peace. Though nothing remains of the original Mouseion, it lives on as the legacy of our modern museums.
지금 그 박물관하고는 좀 다른 것 같은데 역할이. 일단 무세이온이었습니다. 이번엔 세라피온. 세라피온은 신전인가요?
Welcome to the Serapion of Alexandria. In a city of numerous magnificent attractions, the Serapion was considered to be the most beautiful temple of Alexandria.
그건 영어 쓰는 놈들이
Located southwest of the city on a small hill known as the
그
Acropolis.
개념을 제대로 이해하지
The
못했기 때문 아닐까?
sanctuary was constructed during the
걔들
reign
그런 거
of
잘하잖아,
Ptolemy III, upon foundations which had existed since the reign of Ptolemy I Soter.
세라피스 신 신전이라고요? 세라피스가 무슨 신인데? 무슨 신인데요?
Visitors of the Serapion climbed 100 steps to reach the courtyard. Libraries were installed in the porticos surrounding the square building, with its roof and columns adorned with gold and gilded bronze. Pharaohs were generous to the temple, as were several Roman emperors after Egypt's conquest. An inner temple housed the statue of Serapis, dedicated to healing the sick.
가추소님 지금 집이시죠? 집이죠 지금. 집이시면 집 아니에요? 어딘데요 그러면?
Since the 26th dynasty, Greeks in Egypt had gradually integrated the Egyptian cult of the Apis bull to their own rituals. With the establishment of the Ptolemaic Dynasty, the cult of Apis was further integrated into Greek religion.
저게 세라피스라는데요?
During his rule, Ptolemy I chose to merge Egyptian and Hellenic gods into a syncretic divinity named Serapis. This name was the result of the amalgamation of Osiris and Apis. With this new deity, the Ptolemaic dynasty managed to accommodate similar belief sets for two different cultures, bringing about a new
집에서 하시면
dynastic
재택근무할
cult.
수 있는 환경에 만족하고 해라 라고 얘기하고 싶었는데 집이 아니라니까 뭐 어쩔 수 없습니다. 하기 싫은 거 인정함.
Serapis was also associated to other deities, including Asclepius, a Greek god of healing.
재밌죠?
It is possible
저도 재밌네요.
that,
저도
as with the Serapis Temple of Canopic,
설명 같은 거 별로
the
안
sick would
좋아하는데
visit
그래
the
재밌네
sanctuary,
보니까.
sleeping there overnight in the hopes of being healed within its hallowed halls.
자, 알렉산드리아의 세라피온. 많이 봤다. 자, 이번엔 파로스 제도입니다. 그 등대 있는 거기 얘기하는 거겠죠? 난 이게 디스커버리 투어라는 걸 만든다길래 얼마나 제대로 만들었을까 싶었는데 진짜 제대로 잘 만들었다.
Welcome to the Islands of Pharis.
역시 그 역사 공부는 시청각 자료와 함께 하는 게
The
좋습니다.
Heptastadion was a bridge-like causeway
책만 보면 재미없어.
connecting the island of Pharis to mainland Alexandria. Its name is based on the Greek terms of measurement, hepta meaning 7, and stadion, which is a measure of length of roughly 180 meters. Since its construction would separate the Grand Port to the east and the port of Eunostos to the west, it was designed with channels at each end. These openings allowed passage from one port to the other. Along with creating separate harbors for the commercial and military shipping, the causeway served as a main aqueduct for the island's inhabitants. Its presence also helped protect the island and its ports from rough wind and sea currents.
이 그림이 좀 최악 같은데.
At the end of antiquity, the Heptastadion disappeared under layers of silt and soil, which formed an important sedimentary deposit.
지금은 그때하고 지형이 많이 다르겠대. 많이 다르겠다 그죠?
While the Serapeon was the most celebrated of the temples in Alexandria, many other temples were built within the city. Most of these structures have been completely erased over time, and there is no way to discern how many existed. However, research of ancient papyri offer tantalizing hints as to the possible location of at least some of the temples.
사라진 신전이구나 이게.
Both papyri and coins reveal evidence of many temples built for the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, likely had an edifice in his honor west of this island, as well as on the mainland. This temple next to you is dedicated to Isis Faria, the divine protector of the Lighthouse. This location hosted annual celebrations in the month of April, known as the Sacrum Faria, in connection to the Lighthouse. In her incarnation as Isis Fortuna, the goddess carries a rudder and a cornucopia, both symbols of good luck for navigators.
Whoa. Whoa.
Considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a source of great pride for the inhabitants of the city. Construction began under Ptolemy I's reign and lasted 15 years. It was completed during his son's rule. Once completed, the lighthouse was dedicated to the gods for the salvation of those who sail the sea.
등대 꼭대기까지 아마 기름을 나르던 사람도 있었겠죠. 걔들은 고생했겠네.
Built on the island of Pharis, the stone structure was 3 tiers set on top of one another in a step formation. The second floor consisted of an octagonal tower, and the top floor was a cylindrical tower topped by a statue. The interior provided space for staff rooms and a ramp which allowed the transport of fuel to the upper floors.
화장실은
Essential to safe navigation through the rifts and shallow waters, the Pharis was a functioning lighthouse with a beam reportedly visible 50 kilometers away. It's unclear what kind of fuel was used or how much. Any other details of how the light worked remain a mystery.
아마 기름을 썼겠죠.
Whoa.
For several centuries, the Pharis was one of the highest monuments ever built by
하드리아누스
man.
시대라고
It
하는데
measured
하드리아누스
roughly 110
시대면은
meters in height, compared to the Pyramid of Giza,
오현재
which was
시대입니다.
around 140
이게
meters tall.
대략 한 기원 후 몇 년이지?
Gradually, the structure was eroded by earthquakes
몇 년이었나?
and then completely destroyed in 1480 CE, when a fort was built over it.
기억이 안 나네.
Archaeological excavations on the seabed have uncovered many blocks from the ancient building.
Whoa.
아무튼 저 개 높음. 예 맞아요. 아마 탈모도 아니었겠죠? 파네이온입니다. 파네이온.
Welcome to the Panean. The Panean was a temple built in honor of the god Pan,
판.
divinity of nature.
판의 미로에 나오는 그
This
판인가?
Greek god, often represented as a half-man, half-goat, with a beard, horns, and goat's hooves, was considered the protector of shepherds and herds. Pan's attribute was his namesake musical instrument, the pan flute. His temples were usually located in caves and on high mountains, and were frequented by shepherds.
저 꼭대기에서.
It is likely that Mediterranean
그런 건
cults
되게
adopted
잘
the
기억하고
imagery
계시네요.
of Pan to symbolize the Christian devil.
원래 그런 게 기억에 남는 법이죠.
To give proper honor to the god, Alexandrians built an artificial hill upon which they housed his temple to compensate for the flat relief of the city. The artificial mound had the shape of a spinning top or a pine cone, which was accessed by a spiral staircase. The top had a panoramic view of the entire city. Only such heights would be fitting for a mountain god.
실제로 올라가 볼까요? 아! 그냥 올라가려고 그랬었는데 뛰내리라 그런 적 없는데. 되게 높은 곳이라길래 나도 한번 보고 싶어가지고 올라가려고 그랬더니 자, 이번엔 전차 경기장입니다.
Welcome to the Hippodrome of Alexandria. The main hippodrome of the city was called the Legaeon, in honor of Lagos, the ancestor of the Ptolemies. Alexandrians were great lovers of horse racing. They were fascinated by the rivalry of these races, the agon, as it was said at that time, that every competition brought. It was a struggle for glory. The most important chariot race was the Tethrypon. Using 4 horses with the quickest harness to the front right, the charioteer would race for 12 laps, with sharp turns at either end of the hippodrome. The victors were crowned with garlands of olive and received prize money, but the most sought-after reward was to be acclaimed by the works of poets, such as Telemachus and Pindar. Ye hymns that rule the lyre, what god, what hero, aye, and what man shall we loudly praise?
오른쪽 여자
Verily
표정이 좀
Zeus is the
별로다.
lord of Pisa, and Heracles established the Olympic festival, while Theron must be proclaimed by reason of his victorious chariot with its 4 horses. Theron, who is just in his regard for guests, and who is the bulwark of Acragas, the choicest flower of an auspicious line of sires, whose city towers on high, bringing wealth and glory to crown their native merits.
히포드롬 꼭대기로는 올라가 본 적이 없네. 일부러 못 올라가게 한 것 같은데요. 예, 일부러 못 가게 해놓은 것 같아요. 하늘로 이렇게 볼 수 있는데 직접 이 안으로 뛰어 들어가거나 그러지는 못하는 것 같아요. 자, 이걸로 알렉산드리아의 14개 지점들을 전부 다 한번 살펴봤습니다. 이거는 이집트 각 지역이고, 이거는 피라미드고, 일상생활, 파워 섹스 그런 건 없나? 로마 5개 있고. 자, 일단 요까지 하죠. 이거 지금 처리해야 될 일도 있고요. 금방 끝날 줄 알았는데 금방 사실 디스커버리 그냥 맛보기만 하려고 그랬었는데 이거 하다 보니까 되게 재밌네. 이것도 한번 다 보는 걸로 한번 해보겠습니다. 자, 일단 바깥으로 나가죠. 자, 영상을 끊을게요.